faces a mess. Rebel, rebel, how could they know? Hot tramp, I love you so.
Buonasera, benvenuti in Aula Magna Santa Lucia, per favore prendiamo posto.
Good evening and welcome to Aula Santa Lucia. Please take your seats. Welcome to Aula Santa Lucia. Please take your seats. Let's start with the graduation ceremony 2018.
Bene, incominciamo.
Well, let's get started then. Good evening and welcome to Aula Magna Santa Lucia, to the graduation 2018. My name is Michele Pontecorvo. I'm Vice President of the Ferrarelli Group, but I'm here as alumnus of Bologna Business School of the Executive Master Sales and Marketing. I attended the edition number 0. I was a sort of a guinea pig, and so I keep on being used for topical moments like this one. So please be quiet, completely quiet, while the academic parades come in. And now the faculty of Bologna Business School.
Entra il corteo dei direttori di master.
And now the master schools directors.
Buonasera, benvenuti.
Good evening and welcome. And now, the cortege of the Associate Dean, the Director of the Department of the Business Administration Department.
Prego.
Please, this way, Professor Sobrero, Professor Morandini. Hello. And now, the rectory cortege opened by the President of the Steering Committee at Bologna Business School, Mr. Romano Prodi, and then Professor Massimo Bergami, the Dean, and then the Rector, Francesco Ubertuni, the President of Bologna Business School.
Professore. Come da tradizione.
As it is traditionally, the ceremony starts with a gesture that has a particularly symbolic value. So the European anthem and then the Italian anthem. Please stand up to listen to the two anthems.
Scipio, 600 anni. siamo pronti alla morte, l'Italia chiamò. Stringiamoci a corte, siamo pronti alla morte, siamo pronti alla morte, l'Italia chiamò. Noi siamo da secoli calpesti derisi, perché non siamo popolo, perché siamo divisi. Raccolgaci un'unica bandiera, una speme, diffonderci insieme, già l'ora suonò. Uniamoci, amiamoci, l'unione e l'amore rivelano i popoli le vie del Signore. Giuriamo far libero il suolo natio, uniti con Dio che vincere ci può. Stringiamoci a corte, siamo pronti alla morte, siamo pronti alla morte, l'Italia chiamò. Stringiamoci a corte, siamo pronti alla morte, siamo pronti alla morte, l'Italia chiamò, sì.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you to Mara Calzolari, soprano, and piano master Marina Calzolari.
Siamo
We are actually moved by the hymn to joy and by the national Italian anthem. We're here to celebrate the final step of the Bologna Business School program, and we would like to point out once again that the people that have attended this program are now equipped with the best tools to approach the world, a world that is becoming more and more challenging, more and more complicated. And we are now going to ask Professor Romano Prodi, wise person, former president of the European Commission, former prime minister in Italy, who is going to represent the faculty steering committee. Professor Prodi, over to you. Professor Prodi is now going to help us to understand what is currently happening in the world. Dear graduates, for me it is a true pleasure to attend this ceremony. It's a very nice event, and it's a pity that this room is actually too small for this event. Next year, we will host this event in the main square in Piazza Maggiore in Bologna. I'm saying this to the mayor of Bologna, so that everybody is going to see us. I was given 6 minutes to make a few remarks, but actually I was meaning to speak like for 6 hours, so I have to be very brief in my remarks. Dear graduates, or future graduates I should say, since not all the diplomas have already been handed over, let me make some remarks. Actually, it all goes back to one word: the impossibility to foresee things. We are living in a period where it is impossible to foresee things. Unforeseeability, that would be the word. For over 70 years, we've been living in a world filled up with fears, with financial crisis, but we always had some certainties. We had alliances, we had common goals, and we had some sort of common wisdoms, if you want. Now we find ourselves in a different period of time. It's not just about new things, it's not just about new developments, it's just the context that is different. Europe is becoming more and more divided, and for the first time after the Second World War, we are experiencing a very deep divide between the European Union and United States. Over the last few years, so these two main pillars, Europe coming forward and this bond with the United States, these two elements were both put at stake. They are both at risk, and they are actually shaking our society. There are no benchmarks left. Europe was driven by a supranational dimension, which was supported by the European Commission, and now Europe has moved to be switched basically to an assembly of national states represented now by the Council. So it's no longer the same thing. And when these situations do take place, so if we just put Europe in the hands of a council of states, then of course the Council is no longer a supranational authority. It's just a superpower that represents the most important powers in Europe. And this is what Germany has been doing over the years. Germany has been dictating its rules to Europe, thus determining problems and sorrows. So the internal policies, domestic policies of single states had been hijacking basically a policy that was based on dialogue, as we used to have in the past. Things changed over the last year. France has becoming more and more vociferous, more vocal vis-a-vis the international policy. Macron has hijacked the international policy with a French policy. In Lebanon, for instance, he stepped in his capacity as representative of France, held a conference in Libya, taking the Italians and not even taking them into consideration. And the German reaction was very clear. So you hijack international policy, then I do hijack the economic policy. So Europe was supposed to be a two-piston engine, and now we have two engines, and every single engine has got one single piston. So it's a very difficult situation. It's very difficult to support a European-wide international policy. The last summit at European Union level was an epitome of this. Was a very fragmented situation. This went even beyond expectations, and we had new alliances between countries with opposite objectives. We had an alliance between the League that would like to have as a party a balancing of the problems connected with migration, and other parties that have different views. And then let me go back to the relationship between Europe and the United States. There has always been a mutual support, and we had a lot of rivalry. But again, we were both going down in the same direction. The Bush family had, of course, a long-standing European backdrop, if you want. Mr. Clinton, he studied in Oxford. Obama had no relationship whatsoever with Europe. And we now have a president that has deep tensions with Europe, and this has also changed the relations within the European Union. We had European leaders that have always tried to acquire a position of supremacy vis-a-vis the United States. Consider the situation with President Obama. He had a privileged relations, of course, with the UK Prime Minister. Then he ended up having a privileged relationship with the German Chancellor. And now, all of a sudden, we have a president that divides Europe. He is actually... we can't say that he doesn't like Europe. We should say that he has no respect for Europe at all. He doesn't appreciate the value of it. And For one second, I thought that this tension might have even reinforced or bolstered the unity within Europe, since we now have a new challenge to face. But the last European summit, as I said, nobody could get on with anybody. And this is the situation. And in the economic field, here again, we have another situation where it is impossible to foresee what is going to happen. Nobody would have thought that globalization could be questioned. We've been criticizing globalization from many different point of view, but for the first time ever this year, we have started having some doubts about globalization as well, as if this were an irreversible process or not. And then the customs duties fight. Europe is just the middleman, if you want, is just a spectator within this battle, within this thorny issue. This is an economic battle, a commercial battle that flows parallel to the political fight. I'm talking to you as graduates. You have wide experience in the field of economics, and I do really hope that this value chain that you have been studying, where you have smartphones that have been designed in the United States and then the subcomponents have been produced in China or elsewhere in Asia. Again, I do hope that all this can somehow put an end to this situation. But for the time being, entrepreneurs haven't been very vocal, because the economic policy is actually a spin-off of domestic policy. Consider all the custom duties for the steel industry. The President of the United States needs this in order to win the interim elections. So all these intertwined aspects are leading to a brand new scenario. So the economic world is becoming weaker and weaker vis-a-vis all these aspects. And all this is taking place right now as new technologies are coming forward, as technological progress without any precedent is taking place. So it's a technology that involves billions of people within a very limited space of time. So this is basically changing everything from a political scheme point of view. It's a world full of changes, it's a world full of uncertainties, which should be put back within a clear scheme by politics. But politics is not really able to do this, or doesn't want to do this. So there's a brand new world in front of us. So that would be the end of my analysis. I've been talking about changes, and you are going to deal with daunting changes in the next few years. What I ask you to do is to be very active, to have faith, to give back the precious knowledge you've been given, the precious learnings you've been given by the Bologna Business School to the world. And it's not going to be easy. But that's my hope. That's what I encourage you to do. So I do hope that you will be able to go down this direction in a very clear way, although the world is unforeseeable, the world in which you're going to work. Thank you.